Hey, future health coaches, it's Megan McCrory. I know you guys are interested in careers that make a real impact. Otherwise, you wouldn't be listening to Becoming a Health Coach. I want to give you guys a sneak peek on the Black Friday deal that IIN is offering. That's the Institute for Integrative Nutrition. You can grab a massive 45% discount when you use my code MeganMcCrory20 or the link in the show notes. Either way, you'll get that discount. I signed up for this 6 years ago, right now in November, and it changed my life, as you know, if you're a listener. So join into a really great community. You can turn your passion into a business. We talked about that in the last episode. Head over to the show notes and click the link or use my code MeganMcCrory20 to take advantage of this really, really good opportunity. They only offer this massive discount once a year. And if you already had the health coach training program, you can use the same code, the same link for 35% off all the other courses, including the Chauffeur certification courses. So 45% off the IIN Health Coach Training Program and 35% off all the other stuff that they offer. Okay, let's get into it. Hello and welcome to the podcast all about becoming a health coach. I'm Megan McCrory, an aspiring integrative nutrition health coach. Each week, I recap what I'm learning at the Institute for Integrative Nutrition and how I'm applying it to my life. If this is your first time tuning in, I'm happy you found the podcast and a very special welcome to you. You may want to go back and listen from the beginning to hear more about my health coaching journey. Let's dive right into Week 8, Module 7. This week's lesson focused on the healing capacity of whole foods, how a nutrient-dense diet can aid in disease prevention, and accountability coaching. Our first guest speaker for this module was a guy named Pete Evans, and he's an IIN graduate, and he's also a paleo chef. He just talked about basically how to help people understand more about how food is really medicine and how to understand how to eat better for yourself. And he said three words are really the key to helping people understand food and how it reacts with their body. The first thing is education, then awareness and accountability. And I think that's a really good way and a really good succinct way to describe. First, we have to inform and educate people about nutrition, which is not done in our school systems. It's not done anywhere. It's really all self-taught, as I've mentioned in previous episodes of the podcast. There really isn't a whole lot of good, curricula out there. So that's also one of the things I really like about this school. I'm learning a lot about different viewpoints and different strategies and different understandings. And the point is none of them are right or wrong. It's all depending on what works best for your body, this bio-individuality theory. So education, awareness, and accountability. The question is, why aren't we doing what we know we should do? And I've talked about this before as well. Everybody knows what they should be eating to feel healthy, or what they shouldn't be eating that makes them feel not healthy, right? And a lot of that is the accountability. So I can eat like this forever, and then I take a pill later on to manage all my health-related problems. And I really think that now, nowadays, people are coming around to the point of the healthcare system is not going to fix you. You really have to be accountable for your own health. If you rely on the healthcare system, you could be worse off. The next topic that we talked about in the module was, and the point of this module is talking more about plant-based diets. And that's one of the things that the IIN Institute for Integrative Nutrition really touts as part of their program, is that all of their students will learn all the different types of dietary theories. The good, the bad, the ugly, right? And one of the first things Joshua, the founder of the IIN school, said during this module was that you can see a vegan who's glowing and bright and healthy, and right next to them you can also see a person who's eating meat that's glowing and bright and healthy. So there is no one size fits all. But he did go ahead and talk about a few different plant-based diets. And honestly, I'd heard of most of these, but there was a few good ones in here. So I think everyone has heard of like lacto-ovo-vegetarian, which is a vegetarian that eats dairy and eggs. A lacto-vegetarian, which is someone who just eats dairy plus vegetables, obviously. A vegan diet, which is becoming bigger now and heard more frequently. But these next, and the raw food diet, this is also known, I think, now. But the next few ones, this is really good. Okay, he had one, it's called fishitarian. Yes, fishitarian. Vegetarian, but they eat fish. So, and then there's also one called a chickentarian, vegetarian, but who eats chicken sometimes. I think it's half like a joke, but I think there are people who actually do that and believe that they're still vegetarians. And then, of course, the last one was a breatharian. And I had only heard of that within the context of this school. So when I saw it in the program this week, I stopped my lecture and I went and looked online to see if I could see if there was any YouTube videos or anything with someone talking about breatharian. And sure enough, there was a lady and there was another couple, and they were both talking about breatharian. So there are people who claim that they do this. The couple said that they had not been eating anything. Oh yeah, so let me explain it. They don't eat anything. This is the whole point, is that you can live off the energy of the universe, and you have everything you need to survive, kind of like, I guess, like a plant, but like just water and sun, I guess. But check it out. There's not so many people out there touting breatharian, and I'm not really sure if you can say that they're truly living by it, because technically they don't need anything. But these people say that they sustain on like one piece of fruit and some bone broth every week or something like that. So yeah, that's interesting. So Joshua kind of set up some of the different plant-based diets. And then we had two other guest speakers, both physicians. The first one is a speaker. His name is Dr. Neil Barnard, and he is the founder and president of the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, PCRM. He was a very good speaker. I really enjoyed listening to his talk. He had some really good points about lessons we can learn from different parts of the world. Basically also comparing how the U.S. diet has changed over the past, 40, 50, 60 years, how Americans are eating on average 75 pounds more meat a year, 30 pounds more sugar a year, and 40 pounds more cheese a year, something like that. Each person each year, not one of the other, but all of those more per year. I'm not sure if he did it, but he said there was a study on low-fat vegan. Now, this presentation is from 2012, and I had to look this up because a lot of the things he was saying about low-fat, I think, have been disputed in the last several years. So he was talking in 2012, and it's now 2018. And I know in the past 2 years, there's been a lot more information about how fat is supporting the brain function and how you can live in ketogenesis. So I have a lot of notes here to basically, how does the high fat diet jive with mitochondria? Because he did some explanations about fat crowding out the mitochondria in your cells. And mitochondria are the little energy burning things that if you have more of them, you have a higher metabolism, which also contradicts actually the next speaker. But I'll get to him because the next speaker is like, you want to have a lower metabolism. This means you won't age as fast. So again, just within one lesson, there's contradictions, but I think that's good. I think I get a better, well-rounded understanding of the education if I have two contradictory sources where I can do my own research and come up with my own conclusions as well. And they're both doctors. So again, this is kind of interesting philosophy. I'm not sure how other schools teach, but I think there are some other health schools that are like, we're a vegan health school and we're a paleo health school or whatever. And they teach people how to get people on those routines. So how does a low-fat vegan diet work? Basically, you have lots of fiber, which has no calories at all, but you feel full. It also increases your after meal burn, which is they said 16% increase in metabolism. Yeah, so they ran this program within a study, but wanted to do something a little bit bigger. And across the road from his office was Geico, the insurance company. He talked about how they started a study between two Geico sites. The site across from him had two components: community. So they had a community meeting once a week to talk about the struggles of eating a vegan lifestyle and the successes and things like that. And then also the cafeteria at that Geico site offered vegan options. And then the other Geico site, which was not so far away, didn't have those things. And they measured how they came about, like what were the results. So long story short, obviously the Geico program at the one facility really reduced people's weight, which was good. The thing that I got out of that story about Geico was really also the community and the community aspect of not doing anything alone. I think I'm learning more and more that in life, you really, really need to have a community, whatever that community may be. It could be a knitting group. It could be a running group. It could be a group on Facebook that have something in common with each other. But there is a sense of community and togetherness, which, current infrastructure of social media and you could be having a community that's spread all across the world, which gives people with more unique skills or with more unique interests an opportunity to have a group of their own, right? Where in the past, without a social network that's on the internet, that person may have felt very alienated in their own community. Maybe they wouldn't have found anybody with similar interests. And that could be feeling very, very alone. So I'm really seeing the value in online groups in that way. The next thing that Dr. Neil Barnard talked about, which I thought was more interesting than the first part. Well, that's interesting, low-fat vegan diet study, interesting, but this one was more interesting. It's how certain foods are addictive. And I've seen this over and over again. And most of the time we're talking about sugar addiction. And I've heard this before. The taste of sugar releases opiates, and that hits then your dopamine, right? It gives you that pleasure reception, right? So sugar in itself is not a problem. The overuse of sugar is a problem, okay? And they tested this theory with a drug called Narcan, which is an opiate blocker, which they use for people who OD on opioids. And they can give this opiate blocker to someone and have them eat sugar, and they just feel no sensation for it, right? And the interesting part here is like natural sugars from like strawberries or bananas or other things, they don't have this same kind of opiate trigger. So that's interesting. And he talked about he called it how to magnetize a baby. So he said, mix a little bit of sugar water together, put their little little sucky binky thing in their pacifier in the sugar water, stick it in their mouth, put the baby in front of you and look at the baby for 3.5 minutes, right? Just look at the baby for 3.5 minutes while the baby's sucking on the sugar water. And after 3.5 minutes, then you can leave, walk away, do whatever you want, and come back. That baby is like yours, magnetized to you, because they're relating the sugar, which they just had that releases the opiates in their brain, which hits their dopamine receptors, now with you. So you are the giver of all life. And which, makes sense. I mean, But what was more interesting, it was not the sugar, but also cheese and meat. And let me explain this. Cheese has, let's say all dairy has a milk protein called casein. And I've heard of casein before because I'd like to make cheese, and this is something that is added to cheese. So milk itself has casein in it, and that's because when you're a baby, the mother's milk, whether it's coming from a cow, a goat, a sheep, a human, has a milk protein in it, and that milk protein breaks down into opiate-like compounds, so it has the same effect as sugar. And it does that so the baby will come back to the mother and get more milk. They're never far from the mother because that's the attraction. Okay, it actually has this. It hits the same receptor as what heroin hits, and just gives you that little bit of feel good. So it's like kind of drugging your kid every time they have your milk. Anyway, in cheese, casein, this milk protein, is concentrated. So when you have cheese, you have this same kind of a little bit of feel-good hit. And I can tell you, living in the land of cheese in Switzerland, we eat a lot of cheese. And definitely cheese is a weakness for me. Oh my goodness, it is a weakness. Also, though, there is a similar kind of breakdown in meats. Again, same thing, opiates. So if you take all this into account, what it's saying is like, what do people eat after they've broken their heart, right? They go to all the feel-good foods and chocolate, which has sugar in it, and they're using food as a way to get that little bit of hit of feel good after a breakup or a heart loss or a death. And people often turn to food, and that's why we call it feel good food, or what's another name for that? But you know what I'm talking about? All those kind of foods that make you want to curl up and enjoy, it makes you feel good. So I thought that was really the most interesting part of his talk. The second doctor speaker that we had, Joel Fuhrman, his speech was from 2011. He was a little bit harder to follow in terms of his presentation. You could tell that this was a person who had so much in his brain. It was very hard for him to get it all out in a cohesive manner. Bottom line is that this doctor has he's named a type of diet, and this is kind of funny. He calls it a nutrarian diet. So it's essentially, a nutrarian diet is someone who values high density nutrient foods in their diet. Both of these doctors are advocating for a plant-based diet, and they're both, talking about how nutrients are more dense. The second doctor, Joel Fuhrman, had a lot of information. I think I have to watch it another time through with his notes in front of me, because typically I watch the presentations and later on I print the notes out. But it was really hard for me to make good thoughts about this one. But bottom line is, and you can look up these guys, they have books that you can buy. Eat to Live, I think, is Joel Fuhrman's book. He did have some really good information. So one of the things is an acronym for the foods that have the most cancer-fighting agents in them. So this is greens, onions, mushrooms, beans, berries, and seeds. GOMS, GOMBBS, GOMS. And greens, onions, mushrooms, beans, berries, and seeds. And those things are the highest cancer-fighting foods that you can get. And they all kind of work in different ways. Some of them work in a way to slow down angiogenesis. And this is interesting to hear. So angiogenesis is the growth of new blood vessels to support cellular growth. So you have this when you have more fat and you need to grow more blood vessels to support and bring nutrients to your fat cells. But it also happens for cancer. when you have a cancer cell, that cancer cell is putting out a signal to grow, to stimulate this angiogenesis process to bring blood vessels to the cancer cells. Now, mushrooms specifically have an anti-angiogenesis function. So it basically suppress that. So it doesn't allow the blood vessels to grow to cancer cells. One of the other foods, I can't remember which one, looks for the irregularities of cancer cells and binds to them and puts them out of you. I think this is onions, if I'm not mistaken. Again, if you can choose to add these foods in, and I'm starting to see a trend about which foods are good, like which foods everyone is saying that you should have in. Of course, it's greens is the number one, that you should have greens at every single meal. But very, very interesting. And I'm very interested to look up cancer cases where they were healed naturally. So he gave 2 cases of people who had very severe cases of cancer, and they were healed naturally. The doctors didn't think it was possible. And as someone who's just lost 2 people in their lives from cancer in the past 2 years, this topic is really interesting for me to see how people were healed more naturally and what we can do to avoid it. The last thing that was talked about that I think is interesting this week is the idea of accountability coaching. Now, this is the first time we're in Module 7, so this is the 7th week of the program, and it's the first time we actually really talk about coaching. And this week, they're talking about having an accountability coach with another classmate in the IIN program. And the point of this is a couple things. One, okay, an accountability coach can help you with your goals, your vision, what's your ideal target market, but also you're supposed to have this accountability coach throughout the entire program. So when we get more into the 6-month program, so this is what they teach you in the school. In the future, you'd have clients, you would have a 6-month program with them, meeting them 12 times, so every other week. And the idea is that we can practice the 6-month program with our accountability coach, meeting every other week and practicing, each taking turns, practicing how to coach and then giving each other feedback. I think it's a great idea. I'm not really sure how I'm going to find my accountability coach. There are some people in Switzerland. I would prefer to have an accountability coach that I could meet at least maybe once a month. Maybe we talk on the phone once a month. Maybe we meet once a month. But I think now we're getting into it. And as I mentioned in Module 10, the health histories will open, and that's another more of this. And I have to say, I'm starting to get just a tidge behind in my studies because I've got so much going on. I need to recenter and refocus, and I think the accountability coach will help me keep, my focus a little bit. Not that I'm not focused, I just have a tendency to overbook myself and overextend. So I need to watch that in myself, and my accountability coach could help me do that, and hopefully I would be able to do something for that person as well. Yeah, so it's starting to get very interesting. I am very excited to get right into Module 8. So in next week's episode, we start learning about macronutrients, which I'm super interested in. So we will start learning the basics of fat. So types of fat, dietary sources, their effects on the body. Another really fascinating topic for me is inflammation. We're going to learn more about inflammation on health and disease. So what a lot of doctors are saying right now is that a lot of the diseases that we're seeing in our world today, Alzheimer's, diabetes, are being caused by inflammation in the body. And if you can lower the inflammation in your body, you greatly reduce your risk of those prominent diseases. And there's more. Maybe I can list them next week. So I'm very interested to learn more about that. Also, preventative nutrition, which is going, again, into the whole functional medicine. And functional medicine, it ties together with the integrative nutrition. These are words that I'm learning, right? I'd never heard these before. Functional medicine is really a doctor who gets additional training on how to do preventative things with their patients. So not just fixing them when they come when they're hurt, but providing also the service to prevent things. So mixing the Western and Eastern medicine cultures, where Eastern medicine is a more preventative situation and Western medicine is more fixing afterwards. So a functional doctor, if you're looking for somebody that's interesting, check out functional doctors in your area and go and meet with them. See what they have to say. If I was living in the US, I think I would be doing this right now as well. And I actually had 2 friends independently, without me talking about functional medicine, came and said they're looking for functional doctors. And this is somebody who has fibromyalgia and somebody who has multiple sclerosis. So, it's getting out there. The word is getting out there about functional medicine. And this can also work with psychology. There are functional medicine psychologists, functional medicine nurses. So do a little bit of research and see if you have some of these healthcare providers in your area. If you have something that you're not satisfied with your current doctor, and get a second opinion. It doesn't hurt to get a second opinion. And so the other thing that we're going to talk about next week is the pros and cons of dairy, which I'm very interested in because, as I just mentioned, I am very addicted to dairy. I love milk. I have now since stopped drinking milk, and I'm drinking unsweetened roasted almond milk. And this is fine. I really enjoy that. I will not drink that straight up, but I use it in my like my muesli. I use it in my coffee. But I'm interested to hear more about what the pros and cons of dairy are. And then the last thing is they talk about creativity. And I love that. That's part of the circle of life where you need to be balanced in your life. And so I'm really looking forward to next week's episode and what I'm going to be learning. So as always, if you would like to get in touch with me, please email me at becomingAhealthcoach@gmail.com. Go to my website, mybestself.fit. And I have some articles there. This is where the podcast is hosted if you want to leave me a comment about a specific podcast. And if you're listening to this on iTunes, and you're a podcast listener, so I'm sure you've heard this before, it's really helpful if you rate and review me on iTunes, because then I can actually get some visibility and some other people would be able to find my podcast a little easier. So go ahead and rate and review me either on iTunes or wherever you're listening to it. That's awesome. And that's all for today. And I wish you a very, very good day. Till next time. Bye. Hey, you're still listening. Great. Okay, now I can tell you about my 12-week goal setting session. So in this 1-hour session, I'm going to help guide you through a powerful process inspired by the best-selling book, The 12-Week Year. I know. Everybody at this time of the year starts to think about year-long goals. And I would argue that year-long goals are really hard to contextualize. What is going to be happening in a year from now? You have no idea. But 12 weeks gives you a little bit better understanding because you kind of already have your calendar booked out for the next 12 weeks, kind of know what's going to be going on. So if you can focus your goals on the next 12 weeks, you can make some really big actionable steps towards your long-term vision. So in this 1-hour session, we do talk about long-term vision. We talk about where you want to be. We talk about what your 5-year, 10-year, 3-year, all those goals are. But that's only a brief part. We know, we see the long distance view, but let's break that down. And then we get into the 1 to 3 strategic 12-week goals that are going to get you to those long-term vision. Then we're going to put that into a really cool action plan with like checklists and timing and all that jazz to make sure that you are clear and that you have accountability to get those goals done. And then that's not it. Then we are going to tackle your roadblocks because you know you have roadblocks. So we're going to tackle those roadblocks. We're going to create a plan to overcome them. So when you start to self-sabotage, what you can do to get around those roadblocks. Okay, so if this is interesting for you, it is only 1 hour of your time and it's only 45 Swiss francs. I host this gig over on Fiverr, but I'm also going to put a link down in the show notes. So if you're interested, hit me up.